Welcome back to the channel, everybody. What do we have today, Sam?
We are doing Group B, rallying got too fast, and we did one of these before.
We did one, but you guys were saying we should do this one in particular when rallying got too fast. This was the one that you said was the best to go to. And a lot of people even were commenting that the music in the last one was not fitting because you couldn't hear the engines and stuff.
Yeah.
And honestly, I wish that wasn't in there because, you know, as soon as there's a track or anything, they demonetize it. We don't get paid anything for any of those videos. So, I'm totally on board with you guys saying no music in that. But if we go through and like remove the music, then it sounds weird. Anyways.
Yeah, because it's just like dead silence.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Dead air.
Exactly. So hopefully this video is going to be giving us some engine sounds in there.
Yeah, I think that'll definitely give it like more dramatic effect.
Well, it'll be also, I mean, this is part of what Group B is all about, right? Is that they had modifications to the cars.
Like souped up cars.
Yeah, and so this, I think it only lasted 4 years from 1982 to 1986,
well, yeah,
right?
because I think we were reading that some drivers and some viewers actually passed away, unfortunately, because it got a little out of control. Yeah,
and that's why it was so short-lived, because when rallying got too fast. I don't know if we'll see some of that in there, but 1986, I believe, is the last year that it was in existence. And I mean, this is, obviously a long time ago, almost 40 years now, but the modifications, I believe, at the time were so innovative that it led to some of the disruptions, like you were just saying, with crashes and people passing away. So anyways, that's what we know about Rally B, or rally in general. We've done one rally. We did one about big jumps, and then we did Group B, and this is our third video for rally. So we've also done Isle of Man, TT Top Speed.
Yeah.
We did Peter Hickman's Fastest Lap, although unfortunately we had to add an overlay because that one got blocked. So if you got any other racing recommendations, drop them down below. NASCAR, maybe Formula One. We've never done anything like that on the channel, so give us some insights. And I don't know anything about racing really. A couple of my friends growing up really loved NASCAR, but that's my biggest.
I knew some people. My cousin was obsessed with NASCAR, and I had some friends who were obsessed with Formula One, but I never really got into it.
And then the F1 drivers, the only ones I can think of are, back in the day, Mario and Michael Andretti. I heard about those. I think that was my dad used to use their name frequently. He didn't watch it. Everybody just knew who they were. And who was the recent guy that wins all the things that everybody's obsessed with? You remember? He's
I know who you're talking about, but I can't remember.
Is he a black guy or something?
Yeah, I can't remember his name though.
Yeah. Anyways, I've seen his face. I can't just picture his name right now.
Jeff Gordon. That was a NASCAR.
Oh, Jeff Gordon. Yeah, I
that was a
remember his name too.
NASCAR driver that my cousin,
When
my
I
younger cousin, was obsessed with. He'd always be like vroom, with his little cars and be like, "I'm Jeff Gordon."
Yeah. When I wanted to sound like I knew what I was talking about, I'd be like, "Yeah, Jeff Gordon's my favorite NASCAR driver." Knew nothing. Actually, there was a couple. I think, you know what? Now that I think about it, I had a racing game that I used to play. It's like NASCAR something or other.
Really?
And I think there was somebody named Mark Martin or something like that. Anyways.
Yeah, probably. My cousin had a little bed that was in the shape of a NASCAR.
Yeah, so we're sounding like complete idiots right now. I know. So this is why we need to learn more. Anyways, let's get into some Group B for starters, and we'll get into that stuff later.
The Audi Quattro, Lancia 037 and the Peugeot 205 T16, some of the most iconic names in rallying. Cars that pushed the limits of what was possible in a way that we haven't seen since. It was called Group B and is still held as the golden era of rallying. Group B was a class where manufacturers were allowed to go all out with almost unlimited power, crazy aerodynamics and new exotic materials. It brought about new technologies like four-wheel drive, semi-automatic gearboxes and clever turbocharging systems. However, it was only for the bravest of drivers. The hugely powerful cars needed a lot of manhandling to thread them through the tight, twisty stages, away from huge drops and dodging a sea of spectators. But how did this come about, and what can we learn from the crazy cars that won in the Group B era?
Snow.
Rallying went wild in the 80s. The FIA wanted to attract more manufacturers and so created a class that would give the designers pretty much free rein. No power limits, no regulations on boost, and whatever exotic materials you liked. Rally cars over the years have been largely based on road cars, with rules tightening and loosening on how close the relationship has to be between the stock car and the ones that actually race the stage. For example, in the Group A class, the manufacturers have to produce 5,000 road-going versions of the car before it is allowed to compete. In Group B, to lower the costs and interest of manufacturers, they ruled that only 200 cars needed to be produced. Group B also allowed almost endless modifications to be made, meaning the rally cars were nothing like the road cars at all. This approach really worked, attracting many manufacturers to Group B, names like Lancia, Porsche, Peugeot, Audi, Toyota, Ford, as well as so many more. Lancia took the Drivers' Championship in the first year of Group B with the 037. It was the last rear-wheel drive car to win in the WRC. It was incredibly light, using fiberglass and Kevlar for the body, and was powered by a mid-mounted 250 horsepower engine. It has much larger wings than many cars of the time, with a huge rear spoiler to stabilise the car at high speeds. It was supercharged to avoid turbo lag, and it was incredibly quick on the tarmac stages. However, it wasn't quite as quick on loose surfaces. So in stepped Audi with the Quattro, one of the most innovative rally cars of all time, a true game changer. It had an inline 5 engine with a very clever turbocharging system that produced over 450 brake horsepower. It had a small valve that kept the turbo spooled even when off throttle, meaning there was very little turbo lag, making the car quick out of the tight turns. The Audi also had a very aggressive aero kit with a huge spoiler at the front of the car and an even bigger wing on the back. This was one of the first sophisticated uses of aerodynamics in rallying. Drivers said it made the car extremely stable at high speed. The insane power was put through a clever semi-automatic gearbox and drove all 4 wheels. It was the first car to use a 4-wheel drive system effectively. Wow. Before this, many manufacturers...
It's so crazy hearing this commentary, because you're really getting to emphasize the innovation and the engineering that took place to just make these things move faster.
Well, it's so crazy too, because you think of today, right? And like 4-wheel drive is pretty much a standard in like any car with any heavy duty car, right? Whereas now this is the first time they ever really used it successfully, which is crazy.
Yeah, I mean, all this stuff that they talked about, whether it's the spoilers at the front and the back, and like you said, changing maybe from rear-wheel drive to 4-wheel drive, having the turbo just basically ready to go whenever you need it, coming out of the turns, you can use it. But it's the ingenuity that they've come together with. It was like, okay, that's what makes me so interested in this, is how everybody came together and was like, how can we just make these things faster? It's like human ingenuity of like everybody coming together and say, how can we create this monster of speed?
Yeah.
Right?
I also think it's really cool because you have all these different companies, right? And they're all trying to improve their own models in different ways. And you have like this one that's really good at this, but lacks this, and this one that's really good at this. And it's like almost like if you took all of them and merged them together too, you'd probably have like the ultimate supercar. Yeah,
but that's the beauty of like a free market, and so to speak, right? When you just have this like pulling force of pulling everything forward to try to create the best of something.
There's so much growth.
Right. Unfortunately, the lack of regulation, caused it to get out of control, but also that lack of regulation emphasized the productivity in what you were trying to achieve, which is really, really cool. And, this is how we've oftentimes came to creating things that are so remarkable. It's just that emphasis of that tunnel vision of how do we get to that place over there.
Yeah, right? The last thing I'll say is that they're doing this in the snow.
Yeah, too. I mean, I think there was 1 or 2 images of the snow in the last one that we saw, but it's just wild. And that's where that, 4-wheel drive is going to come in handy, right?
Put through a clever semi-automatic gearbox and drove all 4 wheels. It was the first car to use a 4-wheel drive system effectively. Before this, many manufacturers stuck to rear-wheel drive as they thought the additional weight would outweigh any time gains from the extra traction. And yes, the Audi was very heavy, and the 4-wheel drive system meant the weight was higher up than you would like in a rally car normally, but despite the compromised dynamics, it worked. The Audi had more power than the rest of the field, but could also use it more effectively, deploying more power even on surfaces like gravel, dirt and ice. Audi won its first race with the car and didn't really stop after that. They shaved seconds, if not minutes, off stage times. The Audi 4-wheel drive system really changed the game in rallying. But the Audi dominance didn't last long. Peugeot came out with a car that would expose the weaknesses of the Quattro. They used a similar four-wheel drive system but packaged it very differently. Their secret was that they really nailed the car's dynamics. They built the car to look like the road-going 205, a small hatchback. It had a very short wheelbase, which generally makes cars more nimble at low speeds with the trade-off of less stability at high speeds. However, rally stages are often so tight and twisty that this strategy paid off for Peugeot. They also did everything they could to keep the weight central. They fitted a 1.8 litre engine in the middle of the car, although it didn't have the clever anti-lag system that the Audi did. So the drivers used an old trick to keep the turbo spooled up. They left foot braked for the corners while staying on the throttle. This kept the turbo spooled up and gave them immediate power on the exit. But what was really unusual about the 205 was the orientation they mounted the engine in. Normally, race cars have longitudinal mounted engines with the crank parallel with the direction of the car. However, Peugeot fitted it in a transverse orientation, and instead of mounting the gearbox below the engine like in the Audi, Peugeot mounted it to the side. This meant that the majority of the weight in the car was between the two axles and could be mounted lower, making the car much more nimble and responsive in the corners.
Nice.
Low centre of gravity means the car doesn't roll too much, and if it's in the centre of the chassis, the car is easier to rotate in the corners. The 205's weight distribution wasn't 50-50 though, it placed around 60% of the weight on the rear wheels. In simple terms, rearward weight distribution promotes oversteer and frontward weight distribution creates more understeer. This rearward bias meant the car was easier to turn in and control through the turns. You can really see this if you watch the Audi through the corners. The Audi was very front heavy and produced a lot of understeer. The drivers are trying to neutralise this with the throttle, but they have to correct the car several times through the corner. The Quattro understeers, then oversteers, then understeers again through a turn. The drivers really have to wrestle it through the corner. The Quattro was by no means an easy car to drive. Now look at the Peugeot, there is one smooth input on the steering and the car looks much more balanced and easy to drive. There is no wonder it was quicker. It's incredible to watch as these drivers control the car when at crazy speeds on tight and twisty rally stages. Also not forgetting they are threading the car through a sea of spectators on the stage. But why are the fans allowed to be so close to the cars? The stages are public roads.
So crazy. I mean, you think about the drivers and how they were just alluding to driving one car is so much different than driving another car because this innovation is taking place. So, the first time you get in the car and you're driving this innovative approach that they've taken, you've got to adjust the way you're accustomed to driving. And you think of, any other sport, right? You don't have to adjust the way you play soccer or adjust the way you're going about what you do, right? As a driver, it's like you really have to get a feel for the car. Okay, what's this car going to do? How fast can I come in and out of these corners? Can I just hit the corners really hard like they were saying versus those two cars in the Audi, you wouldn't be able to do that as much.
Well, even one of them where they were saying you have to keep your foot on the gas and press the brake going around turns. Like that's something that's so different to adapt to than what you would normally do driving a car.
Yeah, so it's very, in terms of a sport, right, it's definitely much more adaptive in how you're going to approach each individual race or each individual car, which is something I've never really conceptualized before.
And I never thought about that. And they were just about to answer the question I was thinking is like, how are all these people allowed to just stand on the road?
That's why I wanted to pause it, because now we're going to get into, I think, maybe move away from the car so much and get into the race format.
Control the car when at crazy speeds on tight and twisty rally stages. Also not forgetting they are threading the car through a sea of spectators on the stage. But why are the fans allowed to be so close to the cars? The stages are public roads, meaning anyone could go and spectate. However, it meant that many got extremely close to the cars. Back then, people did get hit, but it was considered to be part of the challenge for the drivers. They often kept it pinned and had to hope that the fans would get out the way in time. This guy even had to jump over a passing car. Many manufacturers understood that Peugeot's approach was the way to go, all producing smaller, short wheelbase cars with all the weight in the middle. MG created the Metro with a distinctive boxy shape and a huge front wing, and the Renault 5 took a similar approach too. However, it was Lancia that did it the best. They finally scrapped rear-wheel drive after being uncompetitive all year, so they created the Lancia Delta S4, a short wheelbase four-wheel drive monster. Firstly, they developed an engine with a genius twin charging system. They fitted a supercharger to avoid the lag of a turbo, a bit like the Lancia 037. However, this created less power at high revs. As a supercharger is directly driven by the engine, it can provide boost at low revs, but saps more and more power as the revs climb. So what Lancia did was fit an additional turbocharger that would provide boost at high revs. So low-end boost was provided by the supercharger before cutting out and letting the turbo take over at higher revs. This meant the Delta S4 was amazingly powerful and had the grip to put it down onto the stage. It took many wins before eventually bringing the Group B era to a close. This era of rallying was amazing to watch. Incredibly fast cars and amazing drivers all pushing to the limits of what's possible. There were different winners every year and cars that looked remarkably different with incredible engineering.
Yeah, for 4
However,
years.
you
too.
can't ignore the fact that it was extremely dangerous. The cars were too powerful, difficult to drive, and not enough emphasis was put on the safety of drivers and spectators. The biggest issue was the minimum weight rule. Cars could weigh as little as 890 kilograms. So to be competitive, manufacturers would do anything they could to get this limit down. This created a breed of cars that were very fragile and not up to the job of protecting drivers in a crash. Many of the drivers explained that if this weight limit was higher, more strengthening could have been added to better protect the drivers in a crash. Several huge crashes happened. In Portugal, Santos crested a rise in his Ford RS200. He lost control and went off the course, horrifically injuring 31 spectators and killing 3. All the teams immediately pulled out of the rally and it left Group B hanging on by a thread. A few months later, the final blow came. Lancia's Henri Toivonen was the championship favourite when he lost control late in a fast turn. He was winning by a huge margin when he and his co-driver Sergio Cresto came flying off the road, heading down a steep hill. The impact ruptured the fuel tank, spilling fuel over the red-hot turbocharger, sending the car up in flames. After the incident, it was barely recognisable as a car and both Henry and Sergio were killed in the crash. This led to many manufacturers pulling out, and the FIA ended the Group B class the following year. You should watch this video where I explain what it takes to modify a rally car to set the outright record at Pikes Peak, or this other video that I think you'll love. Thanks very much.
That's
Well, that was
crazy.
That was informative. Like you said, that was a terrible way to end the Group B rallying, but unfortunately that sometimes is what happens, right? It takes a pinnacle moment before, change is made.
I think it's just unfortunate though, because like they said, really the reason why it had to stop was just like the lack of enforcement of safety precautions, which it's like if they could have just taken the time to like have that put into place, it could be something that could have lived on with like slight modifications. Like if they actually like built a specific track for it somewhere with like spectator seating, or like, played around with the regulations and stuff, instead of just being like, all right, we're done with this completely.
Yeah, I mean, I think like I said, the counter to that is the reason why it became what it was is because there were so few safety requirements, right? And rallying still exists, as we know today, but it's different. And I think cars are actually faster today, right? I think that they've made the modifications and, like you said, maybe alluded to more of that safety. But at that time, there was so much, we even saw at the end there when they were talking about the supercharger and, that creation allowed for the car to improve, but that may not have taken place if there wasn't, so lax restrictions on everything. But that unfortunately led to somebody losing their life, right?
Yeah.
Or multiple people, because the spectators, what did they say, 31 injured and 3 people died, I think.
Yeah. In that one crash, and
Yeah.
the driver, I think, and then the other one was the 2 drivers.
Yeah. So, but that was much more informative than the other video that we
For
watched.
sure. Now this makes me want to watch Fast and Furious with their souped up car racing as well.
Well, that's a movie. This was real life.
Yes.
And
that's probably what they went and like based some, like took ideas from for things like those movies.
Yeah, I think they did a rally style on one of the movies. There's so many of them I can't even
I know
keep
there's
track
like
of.
10 of them or something.
But like I said in the beginning, we're getting a little more into racing. I found this was really cool, and I liked it because I got to learn a bit of how this took place while also understanding why it was so crazy. And, so NASCAR, F1, maybe rallying as well, motorcycle-based stuff. Let us know if there's anything else. A motocross, I guess, is something else. Let us know.
There's some cool, like, even X Games related kind of stuff, like racing and stuff. That's cool.
Let us know what you guys would like to see. We are foreign to all of that content,
Yes.
so it'll be new for us for sure. And if you want to check it out with us going forward, hit that subscribe button. We got new content every single day, 2 videos, music, comedy, sports, and history. And big shout out to Sam that she likes to join me checking out stuff like this. Not a lot of women on the planet would do that, so we appreciate Sam. We love Sam, right?
Yeah. Fun fact: I actually dirt biked for a very short time of my life.
That's right. Very short, very short.
Very short, but it happened.
But let us know you liked the video by hitting that like button, and come back tomorrow when we drop 2 more videos.
Thanks for watching, guys. See you next time.